Now, Israel is under attack on 7 fronts, and it's not just a talking point. But it's important to understand what is really happening on each front. So turning to Yemen, and we see that the Houthi pirates are launching Iranian drones. Just today, they launched one that traveled up the Red Sea, then flew across Egypt, turned east into the Mediterranean Sea, and was detected too late as it approached Israel. The drone struck in an apartment building in the Israeli town of Yabna earlier today, causing serious damage, but thankfully, nobody was injured. In Lebanon, just yesterday, 4 IDF reservists were killed. They were scanning a tunnel in southern Lebanon when a cache of Hezbollah weapons detonated. Yes, Hezbollah still has weapons in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah has not disarmed, which is what the ceasefire deal demands, and Hezbollah is continuing to violate the deal because it has not disarmed. In Gaza, Hamas continues to fight. Hamas continues to attack Israeli soldiers, and of course, it continues to hold Israeli hostages. In Syria, the whole world is watching, but Israel can't just watch. Syria shares a border with Israel. Syria is one of the 7 fronts through which the Iranian regime has attacked Israel, and Israel is watching the situation in Syria extremely closely. The regime of Bashar al-Assad has fallen. Assad was a key ally of Russia and has fled into Russia, his regime left in tatters. Assad also had a very close relationship with the leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. With Assad out of Syria, Iran has lost an important part of its axis of resistance against Israel. Now, for years, Assad allowed Iranian weapons to pass through Syria on their way to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And Hezbollah was a key pillar fighting for Assad during the Syrian civil war. With the Assad regime removed, now Hezbollah will have trouble rearming because the route that Iranian weapons must travel through is blocked. But everyone is asking, what comes next in Syria? Well, we don't have a crystal ball, but I will point out that Israel shares a border with Syria. There is a buffer zone in Syria next to the Israeli border. It's been there since 1974 after the Yom Kippur War. The buffer zone kept the two sides apart, but now the Assad regime is gone. Armed groups are attacking UN peacekeepers in the buffer zone, and the Israeli military has moved in and is protecting UN peacekeepers. The IDF took the peak of Mount Hermon, the highest point in Syria, and it has a commanding view of Israel. Israel will not allow anyone to threaten Israel from this position. And the IDF also struck a chemical weapons factory in Syria in order to prevent rebel groups from seizing it and controlling the deadly weapons within. Israel has no desire to intervene in the internal conflict in Syria, but it will not allow anyone in Syria to threaten Israel. Israel wants peace with Syria. We should demand that any new government in Syria make peace with Israel and end all claims against Israel and Israeli territory. Now, finally, there is a must-read article in the New York Times today. The headline reads, "Records seized by Israel show Hamas presence in UN schools." This news article should remove all doubt from anyone's mind that UNRWA is, in fact, as Israel has said for a long time, a Hamas front that must be dismantled. The New York Times reported that at least 24 Palestinians who were employed at 24 different UNRWA schools in Gaza were members of Hamas or its sister terror group, Islamic Jihad. And these weren't just janitors. A majority of the 24 were senior administrators, principals or deputy principals of their schools. The rest were school counselors and teachers, and almost all of them were fighters in Hamas's military, the Qassam brigades. Hamas terrorists were running UNRWA schools in Gaza. UNRWA serves as a Hamas front, and most of the terrorists who invaded Israel on October 7th were alumni of UNRWA schools in Gaza. UNRWA teachers participated in the massacre, and the head of the UNRWA Teachers Union in Lebanon was a senior Hamas terrorist. The overlap between Hamas and UNRWA is enormous. UNRWA is a political organization that is pretending to be a humanitarian organization, and UNRWA has proven it cannot be left in charge of Gaza's future. With all this being said, let's now take some questions from our audience watching live.
Thank you, Asher. Our first question is from X. There have been reports that Qatar has resumed its mediation of hostage negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Are you optimistic or pessimistic that a hostage deal will happen?
Look, this is a tough question to ask so far, into the war as we've seen it now, almost 14 months as it stands into the war. It is impossible to know whether this new round of negotiations will yield the sort of outcomes that we hope with the return of the hostages from Hamas. But I will say it does breathe some air, and some have been reporting some momentum back into conversations around whether or not we truly will see an outcome and a change in the status quo when it comes to the hostage situation. Again, we simply hope and pray that this time does yield results, but unfortunately, we've seen the likes of Qatar, take over as mediators in the past and yielded very little in terms of results. So we'll see if this time is any different.
Our next question is from Sophie on Instagram. With Assad out of the picture, is Israel still fighting a 7-front war, or is it now a 6-front war?
Well, Sophie, I wish I could say that it was now a 6-front war, but frankly, that's simply not the case. It is too soon to tell what the new regime even looks like, what the new government in Syria looks like, and whether or not they will be focused on internal matters, they will choose to make peace with Israel, or whether they will continue to perpetuate the same anti-Israel hostility that has been so key to Syria's international relations and diplomacy over the last 50-odd years of the Assad regime through father and son. We do hope there's a change in the status quo. We hope that we can create some sort of new sentiment and new working relationships, peace, even if I could be so bold, with a new Syrian regime. But simply at this stage, with the lightning fast moves that we saw of these groups ousting the Assad regime, we simply don't know whether this will be removed. And as it stands right now, 7 fronts are still very much active in this ongoing war against Israel and the region.
This next question is from Sarah on YouTube. Is there any sign that the government of Lebanon is going to disarm Hezbollah?
Sarah, at the moment, frankly, the short answer is no. We have not seen Hezbollah truly disarming. As we said, the terrible turn of events which saw 4 IDF reservists killed by Hezbollah weapons cache just yesterday, there has not been that disarmament. That being said, that's why the 60-day ceasefire was put in place. The ceasefire was put in place with the goal to disarm Hezbollah, to remove them from southern Lebanon, and have the Lebanese army come and take over that control of that region. We hope that at the end of that 60 days, that will have the sort of results that we want, that Hezbollah will be disarmed and removed from that area. As it stands, it simply isn't happening, but I guess time will tell.
Thank you. This is our final question. From Jason on Instagram, there are reports in America that the U.S. has been involved in targeting ISIS in Syria over the weekend. Do we know if Israel has any involvement in this?
Operationally, Israel does not publish what it is and is not involved in. As we've seen, we are aware of Israel taking some actions in Syria to reinforce and fortify its defenses there in the buffer zone, to ensure that some of those chemical weapons factories do not fall into the hands of rebel groups with questionable control and resources, and those sort of weapons be distributed widely. I mean, just the thought of that is simply horrific. The idea of chemical weapons being distributed widely throughout Syria and various armed groups of questionable affiliations. Israel is taking measures to protect itself, but in terms of specific actions in line with the US or in line with others, we don't have that sort of operational clarity right now. We will have to see what comes in the future. But the fact is that Israel will work incredibly hard to defend its borders and to defend its sovereign territory against any who may attack it from any of the 7 fronts that surround the nation. All right, that is all we have time for today's daily briefing. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch with us. Make sure to come check us out at the same time tomorrow. That's 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for watching, and please like, subscribe, and share these briefings out with anyone that you can in your network. It really helps to get the message out wide and far. I'm Westropp Evans. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Yabna signing off.